Hello and welcome to STEM with Mr. N, where I perform different demonstrations and explain the science behind what we're seeing. This week is combining a bit of art with science as I explore floating pictures. Let's check it out. For a long time, teachers used blackboards and chalk in the classroom. But if you've been in a classroom that has these, you'll know that they can be very messy and they also create a lot of dust. That is why since the 1990s, whiteboards and whiteboard pens have been a lot more popular. But you need to make sure when you're writing on a whiteboard that you use a dry erase marker rather than a permanent marker. The chemical properties of the dry erase marker is what allows you to be able to wipe it away. But that is also what allows us to be able to make pictures float. So let's start off by looking at the differences between a dry erase marker and a permanent marker pen. For this activity, I'm using a couple of normal tea plates, some dry erase markers, a permanent marker and some water. The first thing I'm going to do is set out two plates side by side, and on one of these plates I'm going to draw a stick man using a permanent marker. Then with a dry finger I'm going to try and wipe the character off. And you'll see that some of the images come away, but the pen has actually smeared on the surface of the plate. Now on the other plate, I'm going to draw a stick man using a dry erase marker that you would normally use with a whiteboard. And again, I'm going to try and wipe this character off using a dry finger. And you see that the character gets wiped off the plate. There's just some smearing from my finger running along the plate, but the ink has lifted off. Now, when you use a dry erase marker or a permanent marker and apply it to an object, the solvent or alcohol that the ink ingredients are dissolved in will evaporate, just leaving the ink colour behind. Permanent markers also have an acrylic polymer in them, and this is what allows the permanent marker ink to stick to whatever object it's applied to. The dry erase marker uses an oil-based polymer, and that's what allows it to be able to be wiped off of objects. Now, if you've watched any of my videos on density, you will know that oil floats on top of water. So we can take advantage of the fact that a dry erase marker uses an oil-based polymer to allow us to make our drawings float. So now I'm going to use a completely dry plate, draw a stick man on it, and I'm just going to pour a little water onto the plate, just enough to cover the surface of the plate, and watch what happens to my drawing. You'll see that my stick person is now floating about on top of the water, and actually part of the head got folded round, which makes it look like it's got a bun or a halo on top of its head. And it's a really cool way to make the drawing move about. But you can do this with things other than just stick figures. If I write out the name STEM with Mr. N and pour water on it, you'll see that the letters are now all floating about on the water. They have got jumbled about and folded round, but the ink is still floating there on the surface. It is no longer stuck to the plate. Now, there's no reason why you just need to use a stick figure or letters. You can do whatever sort of complex drawings you want on the plate and then use the water to make them float around. Just make sure you've got permission to use the plates and markers before you do this, and make sure you're using a dry erase marker on the plate and not a permanent marker. Otherwise it is not going to work and you're going to have a hard time cleaning up the plate from the permanent marker ink. I also tried this activity using plastic plates with a smooth surface. However, they did not lift the stick figure off of the plate, just part of the image would come up and move around. So now you know the science behind it, you can get on creating your own floating images. Well, that's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay up to date on all future content. As always, I would like to take this opportunity to answer any science questions you have about any science topics at all. So feel free to email me at stemwithmrn@outlook.com and I'll get back to you with answers to your questions. You can subscribe to the channel by pushing the button here, and I've added links here to the other STEM demo and explanation videos I've done, here to my STEM career interviews, and here to my Things You Should Know series. This has been STEM with Mr. N, exploring floating images.